Well, it's Wednesday ELA time, and believe it or not, this week we're going to start a new story. Yes, We Are Latinos was kind of short, and so this week we get to read another story. And this story has 5 new vocabulary words that I want us to go over. And I want you to maybe take some notes or come back to this screen if you need to, because in just a little bit, I want you to go do a vocabulary practice page, try to match these 5 words to what they mean. So listen closely because you're going to have to do this on an assignment in a minute. The first word, let's sound this out. Let's decode it. What does this look like? Solution. Solutions. Have you heard of that? Solutions is how you solve. How you solve something. This is resolutions. Resolutions are promises to do or not do something. Maybe you've heard somebody say, I'm going to make a New Year's resolution. That's this word. Of all the resolutions I made this year, the hardest one to keep was being nicer to my brother. Resolutions. Maybe you can make a resolution to make all A's this year. And you can do it, I know. Resolution is a promise to do or not to do something. Second word here. This is one of those words that have a silent letter in them. Can you guess which letter is silent? You think this word is do-ups? Do-ups? No, this B is silent. So we say it doubts. Doubts. If you have doubts, you aren't sure about something. Doubts. I had doubts about auditioning for the play, but it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Doubts. You're not sure about something. Next word is relying. When you are relying on someone, you're trusting or depending on that person. Do you rely on your mom or dad or whoever you live with to give you breakfast in the morning? Or do they rely on you to get your own breakfast? When you rely on someone, you're trusting or depending on that person. Who do you rely on? Number 4 is clumsy. I'm clumsy. I'll be honest. I'm clumsy. If an action is clumsy, it happens in a careless way. I felt clumsy when I tripped over my own feet. I've done that before, haven't you? Clumsy. And number 5 is, look at this. This is a funny looking word with 2 W's in it. Let's say the first part. Awkward. Awkward. In an awkward situation, things feel tense and uncomfortable. Have you ever felt awkward? It was awkward returning my library book because it was so late. And awkward makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It feels tense. It feels uncomfortable. So resolution, a promise to do something or to not do something. Doubts, you're not sure about something. Relying, you're trusting or depending on something or somebody. Clumsy, you trip and fall, you do something in a careless way. And awkward, it feels uncomfortable. So here's 5 words we're going to see in our story today. Let's meet the authors of our story. Well, just one author, and her name is Grace Lynn. She grew up in upstate New York. That means northern New York. As a child, she loved ice skating. She often drew pictures of herself gliding on the ice. Have you ever tried ice skating? I've never tried ice skating. Well, I take that back. I did one time, and I kept falling down, so I quit. I hope you had a better experience if you've tried it. Miss Lynn studied art in college and then began writing and illustrating children's books. So she's an author and an illustrator. Her books have received the award for their excellence. Her novel, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, won the Newbery Honor. That's a big award. And her book, Ling and Ting, won the Theodore Geisel Honor. Have you ever read those? I've never read those, but this makes me want to go read these 2 books. Miss Lynn lives in Massachusetts with her family. She has been recognized for her work in Asian American and Pacific Islander art and storytelling. So we've got somebody, going back to our vocabulary word from yesterday, heritage. We've got somebody with a really neat heritage, an Asian heritage. All right, let's read our story. And our story, whoops, I'll skip the page. Our story is called, it's got a funny name. It's called The Year of the Rat. The Year of the Rat. And it's written by the author we just met, Grace Lynn. But it's not illustrated by her. This time it's illustrated by Kulan. All right, let's get the story going. It's the Chinese Year of the Rat, which is believed to bring change and new beginnings. And Pacey has had more than her fair share of change. Her best friend Melody has moved to California, and her friendship with Becky and Charlotte has become strained. What does it mean if your friendship becomes strained? It means it's not going so well anymore, probably because they've moved. Melody moved away. The new boy in school, Dunway, and his family have moved into Melody's old house, making Dunway the enemy. To make matters worse, Pacey wants to be an author and illustrator when she grows up. But her father thinks that profession is a cold door, a difficult job that could lead to a hard life. You know, when I read that, I didn't know what her father meant by cold door. But then there's those context clues like we talked about yesterday. It tells us a cold door is a difficult job that could lead to a hard life. Born in the year of the tiger, Pacey doesn't feel the luck that tigers are believed to have. Now, as the year comes to a close, Pacey thinks about the resolutions she made at the beginning of the year. What are resolutions? We just looked at it. They're promises to do or not do something. So let's think about, as we talked yesterday about how we start our stories, how did the author start this? With a setting, right? It's the Chinese Year of the Rat. It's a time, and introduce some characters. Pacey, who's Pacey? This is Pacey. You know, Pacey's wanting to be an author and an illustrator. Who did we just read about that's an author and an illustrator? Yeah, the author of this story is. So maybe the story is a little bit about her when she was a little girl. Okay, let's see what happens. The weather seemed to turn cold in a snap. Even though thought we were ready, everyone was surprised when snow fell from the sky as if someone were pouring down sugar. Oh, did you see this phrase? Snow fell from the sky as if someone were pouring down sugar. We talked about figurative language. Do you remember what type of figurative language uses the word like or as? It's comparing two things. It's comparing the snow falling to sugar pouring. It's a simile. A simile uses like or as. Lots of snow today, Dad said in the morning. You lucky kids. The radio said that there's no school. It's so cold outside that it's breaking records. I wish I could have a snow day. I'm going to turn into a snowman going to work today. No school. It was like a surprise vacation. I was all ready to go outside and play until I opened the door. Brrr. The cold wind bit my face, and inside of my nose, stung as if icicles suddenly formed there. I closed the door. She's using more figurative language here. The cold wind bit my face. Can the wind really bite you? No, it can't. What was it called when we give something that's not a person the ability to do something a person can do? It's called personification, remember? Personification. And then she used the other one, exaggeration, another figurative language, exaggeration. She says her nose stung as if icicles suddenly formed there. That's exaggerating, but it's also a simile. It's got the word as. It's comparing her nose to icicles. It's so cold out there, I said, shivering. It froze my nose. Dad laughed and said, I warned you. That's what you get when you open a cold door. All of a sudden, Dad's saying reminded me about the other cold door, the cold door of becoming an author and illustrator. Even though I didn't have any doubts, there's another vocabulary word. What's it mean? You're not sure about something. She says, even though I didn't have any doubts about my talent anymore, I still didn't like that door. But for almost 2 years, I had thought that being an author and illustrator was what I wanted to be and who I was going to become. Now I just didn't know. Was being an author and illustrator just a wishful dream? Or was it something I could make happen? Was it even something I should try to make happen? Remember at Chinese New Year when we wrote resolutions? I asked Dad. Remember how you told me some things you made happen and other things you just wished? Dad nodded. Well, how do you know which is which? I asked. And how do you know which are the things you should try for? Well, this is a hard question for so early in the morning, Dad said. I guess it's different for every person. You have to know yourself and what you can do. Can't someone just tell me? I said. It's too hard to figure out. No, no one can tell you, Dad said. Only you can decide, because only you know who you are. You know who I am, I said, and Mom too. You're my parents. We are your parents, Dad said, but that doesn't mean we truly know you. It's like that little story, and he's going to go into a story here. So we're going to have a story inside of a story, and this story is called Knowing the Fish. And this, just imagine this is the story that Pacey's dad is telling her. One day, two philosophers were walking outdoors. As they crossed a bridge, they stopped and saw an orange fish glide through the muddy green water like floating tangerine pills. There's another simile using like. In the sunlight, the fish sparkled like fireflies. Another one sparkled like fireflies. The fish are happy today, one philosopher said to the other. How do you know? The other philosopher replied. You're not a fish. The friends continued walking. Their footsteps crunched the carpet of golden leaves as they passed, and each was quiet. The first philosopher was deep in thought, considering their conversation. Finally, he said to the other, How do you know that I don't know that the fish are happy? The first philosopher said, You are not me. You see, Dad said, only you really know yourself, and only you can really make your decisions. And I guess Dad was right. It was up to me. All the things I didn't like being scared of, the cold door, being ashamed about, done why, and being Chinese, getting bad grades, feeling weird with Becky and Charlotte, even trying to get Sam Mercer to notice me, I was the one who had to change those things. And knowing that was a little scary. Why do you look so frightened all of a sudden? Dad asked. I didn't realize I'd have to do. Let me start over. I didn't realize I'd have to decide and do things, I said. I liked it better when you and Mom did everything. You're growing up, Dad said. Don't worry, it's not that bad. Do you remember how I told you the story about the 12 animals of the Chinese New Year? The tiger came in third place, without a raft or friends helping him. He looked at the wild and fierce waters and went in, relying on just himself, his courage, and strength to get across. You were born in the year of the tiger, so you're brave. You can face anything. Dad's words warmed me as if I had put on a fur coat. I could be brave. I didn't need tiger luck. I was a tiger. I could almost feel the tiger stripes on my back. I wouldn't let the changes of the year of the rat sink me. That night, Melody was so excited when she called me I could barely understand what she was saying. Guess what? She said. Guess what? I'm coming back to New Hartford to visit. I couldn't believe it, but it was true. Melody was going to come back to visit. Her parents were selling the house to Dunway's family, and Melody's mom had to come back and take care of some paperwork and details. Melody's mom asked if she could stay with us while she was here, and she was going to bring Melody because we know you two would never forgive us if I came alone. But they weren't coming until around Chinese New Year. That seemed so far away. But luckily, the winter days were blowing by. In school, we were doing open projects again about endangered animals, and this time, I was making a book. Are you sure you don't want to be a third partner? Becky asked out on the playground at recess. We were watching the boys play football in the snow. The boys liked to play football in the snow because then they could dive on the ground without getting hurt. We liked to watch because it was funny to see them covered in snow, especially Sam Mercer, who rolled around so much that he looked like a gingerbread cookie with white icing. You'll have to do all that work on panda bears by yourself, Becky added. That's okay, I said. If I want to be an author and illustrator, I better practice as much as I can. What if you don't become an author and illustrator? Charlotte asked. Then you would have done all that practicing for nothing. It won't be for nothing, I said, trying to feel as brave as a tiger. I know I'm going to be one, no matter what. And after I said that, I did feel like a brave tiger. What did I care about cold doors when I had fur that was thick and warm? Just like the tiger that jumped into the wild water because he wanted to win the race, I was going to jump through the door and become an author and illustrator. I wouldn't be afraid anymore. So, when is Melody coming back? Charlotte asked. I'd told him all about her phone call that morning. In a couple of months, I said, smiling, just in time for Chinese New Year. Well, maybe it's good you're doing the project by yourself then, Becky said in a funny voice. We won't see you at all once Melody arrives. I stopped smiling. Suddenly, I understood why everything felt clumsy and awkward when I was with Charlotte and Becky. Clumsy is, remember, it happens in a careless way, awkward, feeling uncomfortable. She feels like uncomfortable with Charlotte and Becky. Why? Well, she tells us. When Melody had moved here 2 years ago, we had become best friends, and I had stopped being such good friends with Becky and Charlotte. Not only had I ignored them and probably hurt their feelings, all the things that I had been interested in and cared about were different now. They hadn't changed. I had changed. Wow, have you ever had friends like that? Maybe you were really good friends with somebody, and then somebody moved into your class, and then you became really good friends with a new person, and you didn't pay much attention to your old friends anymore. Sometimes old friends get their feelings hurt, don't they? I think that's what happened here with Charlotte and Becky. Wow, look at that throw, Charlotte said as the ball whizzed through the air. Who threw that? It was Dumway, Becky said. Can you believe it? I guess Dumway is a pretty good football player. I took a deep breath and gathered my tiger strength. If I was ever going to make things better with Becky and Charlotte, I'd have to let them know how I had changed. I had to let them know that the things wouldn't have bothered me before bothered me now. I don't think it's nice to call him Dumway, I said. His name is Dunway. But everyone calls him that, Becky said. I swallowed hard and looked at my feet. I don't, I said, because I think it's kind of mean. When I peeked up, I saw Becky looking at me with her head cocked like a surprised pigeon. Slowly she nodded. You're right, she said. It is mean. I won't do it anymore. Thanks, I said, and it was as if the ice in my stomach had suddenly melted away. You know what? When Melody comes, you two should come over. I bet my mom would let us have a sleepover. Yeah, that'd be fun, Charlotte said, and they smiled at me. I smiled back. Everything would be all right. Deep inside of me, I heard a tiger roar. I was so loud and strong, I was surprised. I never knew it was there before. Wow, let's talk about Pacey and what she learned in the story. So she has these doubts at the beginning of the story about becoming an author and illustrator. What causes those doubts? Why does she doubt that's really what she wants to do? She knows she can write. She knows she can draw. Well, her dad told her it was a cold door, right? It was probably a job that wouldn't get her anywhere. But by the end of the story, how does she feel about becoming an author and an illustrator? She's determined, isn't she? She says, I know I'm going to be an author and an illustrator. And then her friendships with Charlotte and Becky. Yeah, when Melody. And so Charlotte and Becky were her old friends. Melody was new and she became best friends with Melody. She kind of ignored Charlotte and Becky. And so it made things awkward and clumsy. But she fixed that, didn't she? She realized she needed to be nice to her old friends too. And so she invited them to come. So she's going to have a sleepover with all three of the girls. That'd be more fun anyway, wouldn't it? So she solved that problem. Is there any more problems? Well, she was kind of unconfident, wasn't she? She kind of didn't feel confident at the beginning of the story, and she was really nervous about things. But what about when they were calling Dunway Dumbway? What did she do? She stood up for him, even though he was like the enemy. And she said, it's not nice to make fun of people and call them names. That took some courage, like the courage of a tiger, to stand up to somebody and tell them it's not right to make fun of someone else. But she did it. I think Pacey has learned a lot in this story. I like this story. I hope you enjoyed reading it. I think the author did a great job, and I think just maybe the author put a little bit of her childhood in this story, if I was guessing. All right. We'll read this story again tomorrow.